Awesome. I promise we'll honor your time. We'll get in and out, but the good news is with a nice small group, we can answer any questions you have along the way. And so just as a heads up, one of our presenters today is not here. Ms. Sherman is not with us today because her daughter had some complications with her wisdom teeth. And so today you are stuck with two fearless leaders. I'm Melissa Lester. My friend Shannon is here. She's listed as Bytes host. So if you see Bytes host speaking, just know that's Shannon. And so no worries, though. You're in good hands. We'll get you in, we'll get you out, and we'll give you lots of information along the way. Our contact information we'll share at the end. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us later on. But as a roadmap, just an overview of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to show you some of the basics for changing the snippet default. Hold on just a second. I've got to answer my door. Hold on. All right, got it covered. We're going to change the snippet default for when you're grading an educator. We're going to show you how to upload images to Educator and how to add those graphics to your feedback. We're going to show you how to make clickable links or hyperlinked images and give you some examples as far as how you can ramp up your own feedback game, and we'll stop to answer any of your questions along the way and afterwards. We hope it won't feel like drinking water from a fire hydrant. And the good news is you'll have these slides to take home with you. So you'll have kind of the walkthrough for this information afterwards as well. So if we're going too quickly, slow us down. If you have questions, slow us down. But no, we'll stick around afterwards, and you can always hit us up on Skype as well. We're happy to share this information, and I don't think it'll be too much for you. So we'll get started today with a kind of a background. Just stepping in to help our colleagues with grading. We see some common images. Maybe you guys have seen some of these things too. From a student perspective, I get to see this. My stepdaughter is taking classes with Florida Virtual. And on the left here is an example. We've blocked out names because we're not going to call anybody to the table. This is an assignment from English 3. I used to teach English 3. I know Shannon also used to teach in the English schoolhouses. And this assignment specifically probably takes about an hour and a half to complete. And this is the feedback that these students are receiving, just telling them, excellent job on ethos, logos, and pathos. Make sure you cite your source. These are like really complex assignments, and if you can imagine what a student feels when they get some kind of feedback like this, it's clear not a lot of energy and effort is going into that. And then you see over here, if you're a lab student, it's got to feel great when you see the exact same feedback basically going back and forth with the same taglines along the way. So it's kind of systemic, and the sad thing is with grading, it takes so much energy and time from our side, but when you start integrating some of the things we're going to talk about today, you're only really putting in a little bit of extra energy, but you're providing a really good service and making things interesting for students so that they'll actually read it and see it. So that's kind of some of our motivation and inspiration, is to step up our own feedback. Welcome, welcome. We just got started. So the first step we're going to go over is how to change your grading snippet default. I know a lot of people already know how to use snippets. Just as a quick check, since we've only got a few of you guys in the room, how many of you already use snippets in your grading? Give me a green check. Good, awesome. Good, and so with one thing we pointed out to people is that you can make it so that it auto-loads a snippet feedback when you manage your feedback snippets. I call it you set up your assignment default. So every time we go in to grade, this is what we have set up to make as the default for every assignment we grade. And I'm going to hone in on this so you can see this portion here a little bit more clearly. But this is the first step in changing feedback to make it more visible to students. And this is when we start to get into a little bit of HTML. So don't freak out if you don't know HTML. It's all right. We're going to give you some codes here that you can use. But this is yeah, save this, but you'll save the whole presentation. So looking over this, the first thing is to change the font size. When you're grading, the default size is something like 10-point font. It's practically unreadable. And that's especially true if students are working on tablets or on their cell phone, which I know in a pinch, a lot of our students are having to do that. So the first thing I would suggest is changing your font size. Size 4 is a more readable font. We'll show you the difference of what that looks like. You can also change the way the font looks. The default, I believe, is Arial, but you can change it to any other type of standard fonts. I like Tahoma. I don't know why. I just like the way it looks. And so with this HTML, what it does is if the student has Tahoma, it'll do Tahoma. If it doesn't have Tahoma, it'll do Palatino Linotype. If it doesn't have that, then it'll go to Arial. So you kind of have some options that you can give your students just to make it a little bit more visual. And this is one of the specific codes you can enter in the snippet default that auto-loads their names. So you don't have to type it out, so you don't have to manually say hello and type out those random names that sometimes are really difficult to spell. It'll load it for you. And I like to put at the bottom the date that I graded it and the time, and you can change the font color, and these are some of the codes you can use to do that. But if you just went in and made this one change in your grading snippet feedback, you would be changing the size of the font, changing the font face, and then also providing that date and time when you graded it. And that way they know kind of when you touch their work, which is always interesting when it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So here's visually on the student side what this does for their grading feedback. Let's say this is the default. Like if you change nothing, this is about what it looks like. And it's not terrible, but it's kind of small. It's kind of hard to read. But just changing your font size, you're upping it by about, I think it's 2, like going from a 10 to a 14, I think. So this way they see what you're writing. So that's just one basic change you can make just to make it a little bit more readable. If you did nothing else but this, at least you walk away with some visual feedback they can read. And on a mobile device, I'll tell you, it makes a big difference because like I said, it is really almost unreadable if you're trying to. There is a cheat sheet. We'll get to it in the slides. Don't worry, we got you covered. So this is the first basic change. So if all you did, this is kind of visually what it looks like from the student perspective. So hopefully we haven't lost anybody yet. If you have any quick questions, my fearless friend Shannon's in the chat box, so feel free to slow us down. But you're right, Erin, it's something really simple that visually makes a big difference so they can actually read what it is. And you only have to change it one time.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Melissa. Just so you know, like this isn't something that's like messed with multiple times unless you want to, change your font size or the color. But really, once it's there, it's there. You don't have to, this isn't something you have to do every single time.
All right. So as we move forward, moving things into Educator, I think, Shannon, is this where you pick it up? Or do I pick up?
I think so.
Yeah.
So this part is all about creating and uploading images to Educator. Melissa has this Agate editor. She prefers to use that. I prefer to use PowerPoint, but it's whatever program you are the most comfortable with. And once you, create those, you're going to want to save them as a PNG file. That way, like, you can test them if you want to send feedback via text or, anything like that. And try to keep your images, as simple as possible. Because, like I think Erin had mentioned, you don't want to overwhelm them either with pictures or words. So keep it simple. Use a Bitmoji or some personal pictures. I know Melissa has some examples that help, connect with the students and build those relationships. So how to create your own Bitmoji. Super exciting is they added this to the Google extension. So if you just Google on your computer, like Bitmoji Chrome extension, it'll pop up in the left-hand corner. I wonder if I can. I don't know if I put in a little thing there. Yep, it'll pop up right there. So and then every time you go to use a Bitmoji, it'll be right there whenever you open a new browser. So So once you have that, that's what I prefer to use. Sometimes I'll use my own photos that I took on my phone. Melissa uses a lot of those, but Bitmojis are really great too for the signature line and your instructor feedback, which we'll get to, in a little bit. But if also, once you get the slide, I put the link on the bottom. You can kind of see it looks orange on mine, Peter. But yeah, so once you get all that set up and you want to start creating, you click on your Bitmoji. So the way that I do it is I throw into PowerPoint, just like you were going to create a banner for like vacation coverage or anything, that the lead had made for us before for, Labor Day or something like that. So I pick whichever Bitmoji I want, and they're already made pictures. If you type in great job, there's going to be a Bitmoji for great job, or I had killing it. You can use all of that to create your own little customized feedback in PowerPoint and then upload it into your feedback. So, or Snagit Editor, whatever you prefer. So these are some examples of once you upload them, you pick your, let's say you copy and paste your Bitmoji onto PowerPoint, and you've created whatever visual you want, and you snip it into a PNG file, and you upload it into your comment folders, and get the HTML code, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this is just kind of how you would set it up. So Melissa did this one coming up next. That one she's on Snagit. I think all of these are on Snagit. I just do the same, but on PowerPoint, and then I make a little snippet and upload it that way. But these are just some of the ways that you can connect with your students. I also use it to preview the next assignment, she has coming up next. What to expect, or some common mistakes you can upload in there. It's just really cool. And like Erin said, some of those low-level readers, or if you have English language learners, this is super helpful for that as well. So here's some really intense examples here. So these pictures here are Melissa. Yeah, Melissa,
I wouldn't say these are intense. In fact, one of the things that I think when I look at feedback, because I created this stuff years ago, my partner and I in English 3, we actually worked on kind of common feedback and some corrective feedback we worked on together. And what we did is we actually worked together to create it, and we have both of our Bitmojis in them. So when we graded for each other, which often happens with teammates, if I graded, if she graded, then, we had both, they kind of saw both of our faces and they got used to it. Or your students know, if you create something and you put a little bit of you in it, they know it's you that created it. So it's you can share things with your friends. This was from my English 3, there was a quiz I think they took that had some quotes from JFK. And exactly, you're getting that personal connection. The one with the Leaning Tower of Pisa, I shared a time when I had to hit my turbo button, and so this is a personal example of when I chose to go to Europe because I was pregnant. I didn't know I was going to be pregnant, surprise, but I went anyway. But I only had to create it one time, and then once I've uploaded it, anytime I go over that assignment, I still give specific feedback, but I include that personal example in there as well. So I do it one time, I'm done, and then I've got specific, personalized feedback for every student that goes through my class.
And even though it's it looks really intense on screen, it's something simple that you can do, but the kids connect the idea oh my gosh, you did all this work and made all these cute little things for me. So they feel like you're, actually reading their work and taking the time to connect with them. So yeah, these are really cool examples that Melissa has. And, she has a personal one here, but she also has ones from English that made her connect to whatever she was teaching. So, kind of it's also that growth mindset there. Okay, so uploading those images to Educator. How many of you guys know how to do this, uploading to Common Folder? Get a green check or a red X. Okay, perfect. So, so just in case, like as a refresher, I think a couple people are not familiar with this. Where you go to My Folders, you have your own folders in there that you probably upload things that maybe you force to your students, but you always want to upload to the common folder. That way you can share your resources with peers. And also, if you were to insert it into the to your Google box, the search bar, if you were to insert it there, it would pop up. So anybody could access this from in here. So you want to make sure you do that because if you're sending this to parents, they won't be able to open it. So always remember to do it to your common folders. So you'll click on that, and then you can create your common folder. Like I'm just Espadilla. I just created one, and make sure you like I said, you keep it to that common folder. And then you'll just upload, and you choose whichever file you would like. Make sure you do it in the PNG format again, so that you can get the appropriate HTML code and everything, and it works. So you wouldn't want to upload like a .doc or something like that. So just make sure it's the PNG. And then once you upload it there, it'll show you, it'll kind of give you, and most of you are probably familiar with this, if you upload like the under coverage, it'll say like, it'll pop up whatever image you uploaded. And then here at the bottom is the important part, where it says, hold on, let me see if I can highlight that for you, right here. Thanks.
Next slide.
Yeah, right there. Sorry. Thanks, Melissa. So you're basically going to copy and paste this part of it, but you're not quite done there. So it gives you part of the HTML code, but you have to add this to the beginning, this part right here. Sorry, my little drawing skills on here are very good. So the HTTP learn.flvs.net, like you have to add that in order for it to automatically pop up in feedback, or else it'll just come up as a bunch of like mumbo jumbo HTML code to the student. So down here at the bottom is the example of what it looked like. So basically, Melissa's copy and pasted educator / comment, all this stuff that's highlighted up here, and copy and pasted this, slapped it in front of it, and then that's your HTML code. So if you want it, once you're done creating on PowerPoint, you save it, remember save it as that PNG file, upload it into the common folder, and then that's where you'll get your little HTML code. So it seems like a lot of steps, but once you do it a couple times, it's super quick and easy, and you'll be able to create multiple ones of these for different assignments and whatnot as you go along.
And the key here on this this last slide, and this is something that I noticed. In fact, my stepdaughter got an email from her teacher coming back from break, and what he did is he uploaded an image and he sent out a couple of pictures saying, hey, we're back in the office, and he emailed it through Educator. And if you just send this link here, all people see is this link. They don't actually see the image. When you create the full HTML link with image search equals and makes the computer search for the full HTML, it gives them the actual picture. So what it does is it allows parents to see things. Like if you have feedback that's in, like if you send your student and you click on supervisor so the parents get the feedback as well, if your feedback doesn't include this HTML start here, the parents, all they see is a link, is a hyperlink to something that's dead. And so here it is, you're doing all this work to create these great visuals. You're providing all these these help notes that none of them can see. And so unless they're logged into Educator, they can't see it. This works great if they're in Educator when our students are logged in. But if you're sending it to them, if they're accessing it outside of Educator, they don't see anything unless you include this extended full HTML link. Does that make sense?
Hey, just like as a tip for this, because after we taught this at conference, we got a lot of really positive feedback. from like on Skype, but one of the biggest things I noticed was the spacing. So just a tip, if you copy and paste that and put it on a Word document and just leave it there so that the spacing is always correct no matter what. Because people are like, oh, I uploaded my my link and it's not working, or sorry, my HTML code and it's not working, and I have to like look and kind of hone through each spacing. So, once you get this, copy and paste that, the caret, the image search, HTTP, all of that stuff, copy that and just stick it like on the Word document so that everything's perfectly spaced.
All right. We moving on? I think so. So as you go through, now you understand kind of how we can start taking this coding and putting it into your actual grading feedback. And it really is just a matter of taking that full image search equals HTTP link that you've created, and you're putting it into your grading feedback just as you normally would, just in the normal part that you type the student feedback. You can put it in there. And so you create the images that you want to kind of front load or preload. And so one of the first things that I did this year when I was trying to up my feedback game, I didn't have a lot of good feed forward. And so I just sat down one day and I created some banners that said coming up next, and I created one image for each of the next assignments in the course. So it's preloaded, so every time I grade lesson 101, then at the bottom of it, it says coming up next for lesson 102, and it gives them that feed forward for the next assignment. Just a little heads up, a little teaser as far as what the next assignment is going to be. And so that all of those codes I just put straight into the feedback that you're typing inside of Educator. And this is what the students will see. It looks like this for you guys. It looks like beautiful images for those students. So one of the things that I would suggest if you're going to take this is to do it in pieces. And one of the first things I would recommend is to create an instructor feedback banner and a signature line, because these you can use in every single assignment. And what I love about instructor feedback is as students are scrolling through their feedback in their grade book, if you take a look, you can actually enter a student and see what it looks like on the student end. It's sometimes hard to find the teacher comments. There's a little line that says teacher comments. And when you create instructor feedback, it really draws their attention to where it is you're giving your feedback to them. And then obviously having your signature line at the bottom, you can make those individualized as you go. But it, again, just makes it a little bit more user-friendly, and you can make these hyperlinked if you have a scheduler as well. So the first thing I'd say is work on a feedback banner. Lisa, I just drew it with paint. I took paint and I drew it. It's like the old school paint that we have. These are how skillful I am not. All right. So looking at basic feedback snippets. Here's where I don't want to overwhelm you, but I want to show you guys some basic HTML, and we're giving you the cheat sheet for this in here as well. But you can see, just looking at this, this is what loads now for me when I do any assignment. This is what loads automatically. I call it basic info, so it automatically loads. It changes the font size, changes the face of the font. I like to center my instructor banner, and so that little instructor banner, the instructor feedback banner, here's my code for that, and then I end the centering. I start out with my student name, and then I've got my signature line, I've got my date graded. So this is how it starts to look a little bit more intense, but I've added in a little bit of extra HTML here just to make sure my image is centered. And you can see here, these are the codes for the instructor banner and the signature line that I've got in there. And then I like adding a paragraph break. These are codes that you'll be finding yourself using more frequently. Just adding a P in brackets here breaks the lines up so that not everything's clumped together. You could push enter a couple of times too, that does the job, but adding the P guarantees that it's there. So here's what happens well, actually, I'm going to pass this to Shannon. Shannon, tell me about the HTML editor, because I know you use this pretty frequently.
Yes, okay. So this is really cool if you want to test it out, because when I first started doing this, I was inputting it in feedback for kids and sending it to myself like 15 million times. So I had all these emails trying to test it out. But if you go to this website on the bottom there, the www.w3schools.com, basically it doesn't matter which one you pick. There will be ones on there that say like heading or title, paragraph. It doesn't matter. You can literally copy and paste your code anywhere into this box on the left. You click run. And yeah, you can Google HTML editor as well. That's just the one that I've used before. You click run, and then in the right side, it's going to pop up what it looks like. So if you've done it correctly, the image will pop up. If you haven't, it's going to pop up like pieces of your mumbo-jumbo HTML code. So I think I have a picture in here. Let me add it in. Yep, so right here, I know it's really hard to see, but I really just, all this other stuff is in here, this document, HTML heading, title, you can ignore all that. This is just a place to test it out. So right down here is my image learn.FLVS. Thanks, Melissa. And then I hit run, and that's what it looks like. A couple times I did this. This is how you know, you'll also know if your spacing's not right. It'll just basically pop up whatever you put in there. It'll pop up on the right. So you want to check like, oh, is my spacing right? Did I add the image search? And then that's kind of how you can test it out. These are basic HTML codes that you can use, but I think we have an actual one in here, like a cheat sheet. But like the paragraph, the font color and stuff is in there as well. Melissa, was that the one that we used? Or there's one again too, right?
This is the one that I used. I think the only thing that was missing was the P in here. This is about as far as I've been digging into HTML, to be honest with you guys, because there's not a lot that I use. Sometimes I like to bold certain words in my feedback or underline or italicize, and you really don't have that editor ability with Educator as it is. We are going to be getting a new system at some point, and hopefully it'll give us some of those features, but as it stands, you kind of have to do it yourself. So if you have, I hate to say canned feedback, but we all kind of have some basic feedback, corrective feedback, and you want to go in and add bold or underline certain words, these are the codes you can use to do that so that your code remains consistent. So when you run it with your students on their end, they're going to see it as bold text. So these are some good cheat sheet HTML codes you can use.
The one on the bottom that I just put the little smiley face for, that's the one that you're going to want to have like some copy and paste handy. So you can literally just copy and paste it and put it, insert your code after it. That way to make sure you're spacing. So definitely like save that one down there. And then we'll talk about the hyperlinked images here soon. But this is the adding graphics. Melissa, did you want to do this one?
Yeah, sure. So if all you've changed in your feedback, because this is our original like no change basic feedback, if all you've changed is the font size, the face font, you've added an instructor banner and your signature line, we went from basic feedback here to more complex and beautiful feedback down here that grabs their attention. And so instead of that little line that says comments and then you have to kind of read in to find out where what your teacher's saying, it really draws their attention to it so they can see where it is your feedback actually begins on that page. So yes, go Nov. So this is an assignment. He was talking about colleges and stuff. So but if all you change are those things, at least you're coming out with really great visual feedback. It's going to define you as a teacher who cares, who's interested in making things interesting. And believe me, I'd say probably only maybe 20% of the teachers in Florida Virtual School consistently use really visual feedback, and that's not an under or overestimation. I'd just say in my in my diggings, I like to go in and enter a student and look at other classes and how other teachers grade things, because I'm nosy like that, and I like to steal good ideas. But it's pretty across the board. This is the standard feedback with a few occasions here and there. So let's up our game, guys. All right, so let's see. If we're going through step by step, just kind of looking at our progress, this is what we started with on a mobile device without any changes. By just changing the size of the font face of the font, it comes to this level, and this is what it looks like on a tablet or on a mobile device. So again, way more readable. It'll auto-adjust the size of your images so students can see it on the screen, and you've got a lot more, just a more visual feedback for students to read. So that's step 1, 2, 3. Great. So,
yeah. Before you go to that, so I would take like the 1, 2, and 3, so you don't feel like you're drinking water from a fire hydrant. This is how I did it, like in days. Like I didn't try to go in and do all 3 steps at one time. So I started out with changing from 1 to 2, and adding my instructor feedback and signature, and as like time went on, like I would take another day and do all the stuff for lesson 1, and then all of the feed forwards for lesson 1. So don't try to like go home and do all this in one shot, because it'll be super overwhelming. So if at the very least you add your default with your instructor feedback and your change in font, that will make a huge impact.
I understand, Erin. All right, so now you guys understand how to upload images, how to make them visible so people actually read them. And now the next step is if you'd like to make it a hyperlink so that people can click on it to go to a website, to go to your scheduler if you use one, you can even open up an email. You can click on its email. This is the kind of the next step, or a live lesson calendar, right? If you want to refer them to the help site, to the live lessons, wherever you want them to go, you can create an image that says, like, click me to go here. Or if you have, let's say you're in a math teacher and you've got a student struggling with Pythagorean theorem, things I don't remember from 15 years ago, you could maybe send them to a Khan Academy video, and you can insert that HTML. The coding for it is pretty simple. It's very similar to what you guys have already learned, but at least now you have it on the cheat sheet so you can do it. But basically what you're going to do is you'll start a hyperlink. It's hyperlink referencing, and you're going to tell them what website you want it to go to. This is my old scheduler before I got married, so I don't even know if it still works. But you tell them where you want it to go, and then you insert whatever picture it is you want them to see. So whatever image you guys have created, we've already showed you how to kind of upload those images. You put the picture that you want them to see, and then you end that hyperlink so that otherwise everything would be hyperlinked. Everything would have the little blue lines on it. So this is kind of the steps as you go. You just set it up, you tell them where you want it to go, you show them what picture you want them to see, and you end the hyperlink. And that allows whatever image that you choose to be kind of clickable, a hyperlinked image. So, excuse me. So that can be as simple as hyperlinking an image, or if you wanted to hyperlink like actual words, if you wanted to say, hey, visit my scheduler at bookosborne.com, you can actually make it an active hyperlink. Right now we can't do that in Educator without adding the HTML. So this is the code for creating a clickable hyperlinked text. I do, Rosie. If you stick around, we can talk about it afterwards. I use You Can Book Me, but I've used a couple of different ones. So this is the code, ahref. You tell them where you want it to go. In between the brackets, you tell them what website you want them to see and to visit, and then you end your hyperlink. And so this is kind of what it turns out looking like. So these are the basics for creating hyperlink text. Are there any questions about this? I will be here afterwards with Shannon if you have any questions. But basically what you're doing is you're ramping up your feedback game to be something similar to this. And this obviously is a little more complex than average feedback, but you've got at the beginning a header to pull their attention to it. You've got that personalized feedback that Florida Virtual is looking for that addresses the actual, the assignment and what they wrote about. I have a personal connection that's visual. I've got my signature line, and then I have my visual feed forward for the next assignment. And if you look at this, it looks long and intense and colorful, but this is the part here up at the top. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of what I actually have to do when I'm grading, and it really is only, a sentence or two long. So it's not much work once I've gone ahead and I've created all of these images beforehand, and I only have to do that one time. So this is what the students see, but it's still personalized. We're still giving them that personalized feedback up here, which you can't get away from if you want to be highly effective. So there's lots of different ways you can use visual feedback. I know for some of our assignments, I like to just make those extra connections. I think in my English 3 class there was some lines in referencing Ruby Bridges, protecting her at school, and so I just put in my feedback and was like, hey, that line you chose is in reference to Ruby Bridges, the little girl who had to be escorted. Here's a picture to give them that extra historical, piece of information. It's more information. It's not going to necessarily make them star students or anything, but it shows that I read your assignment, I saw that you chose that line, and hey, here's some extra info. You can also, I love TED Talks, and so I'm always recommending to students, like, oh my gosh, there's this TED Talk that I love. And so there are a couple of assignments where there's this perfect connection to a TED Talk. I'm like, hey, if you liked this, you would really like this TED Talk. Are they going to go see it? I don't know. But if I catch 3 or 4 kids who do, then hey, maybe they'll go visit it and have some life-changing 15-minute experience. Who knows? If you need them to go to a live lesson and you want them to finish the class, or you know that they need it, you can create a visual that just says, hey, you haven't done your live lesson yet, and make that a hyperlink. So that's putting it in there. I think this was something years ago used for English 3 just to get them to finish before the break, and it told them about all the live lesson ideas or the options that were coming up. And then make it a hyperlink that draws them right to the live lesson page or the live lesson calendar so they can take a look. Those are good ideas too. Getting them excited about what's coming up next, all those feed-forward assignments, that not only is it kind of what you need to do for highly effective, it just kind of gives a little bump to get them going. Or you might even be able to say, hey, the next assignment is really short. It might only take you 15 minutes. All you have to do is blah, blah, blah. And maybe you get them to say, oh, I guess I'll go on to the next one. But lots of ways you can kind of get them moving in the classes. I like to put my notices, like when I got married, on my feedback, I just put in a little picture and they're like, hey, don't forget, I'm going to be out of the office. See you suckers later. But if you need a DBA, make sure you make an appointment, so they know you're human and they get excited about the things you're excited about. Or little things like, why aren't you capitalizing your I's? You're 18 years old. Holy henna, I want you to be a functioning human being. But say it in a nice way. So there's lots of ways you can put in information just to kind of help, not have to type everything out, and you might actually get them to read it. So they don't capitalize their I's.
Melissa, on that page before this one, the coming up next, give and take, you can also, if you've created the HTML for that, if you just send the HTTP to kids via text, or you create a bit.ly, you could send this to kids that are like, hey, I saw you submitted lesson 5 and it's been, 8 days since your last assignment. Here's like how you do lesson, 2, or how you do, like, whatever the next assignment is. You can use those as, like, little bit.lys to send to kids that have, like, little simple instructions, like, oh, it's only 3 to 5 sentences about what you're proud of. So you can create those and text them to kids as well.
You make a good point. Every time I save files, the reason we recommended earlier saving it as a PNG file, perfect segue, is anything I create, if I create it as a PNG and I send it via text, it shows up in line with the text. And you mentioned, Shannon, like sending instructions. I have like slides for each of the assignments with the basic instructions on them. So if they don't do it right, I go back to the instructions like, here's what you need to be doing. I like to text that to parents sometimes too. If it's like they have one assignment left, I'm like, he has one assignment left in the class, here it is, and I send them the instructions to the parent. It's only a paragraph long, or whatever it is. You know, sometimes it helps to get them on board as well. So if I just save it, you know, you've got it as a PNG. Yeah, exactly. You can do it as a bit.ly or you can do it as a link, but you always want to save it. So here's just some housekeeping for you guys as you start creating your images, because as we move forward, just being honest, if we get a new system, we may not have Educator to save all of your images. So be smart now and start keeping track of it in your Google Docs. And so what I do is I have a small version of the picture here. I have the full code that I've created already, so I don't have to do this 4 or 5 times or remember what it was. And if I create a bit.ly, I like to put the bit.ly in the 3rd column just to make it easy, so I only have to do it one time. I can send it to the students. And so I have all 3 of those available to be able to easily share with a friend. So if I create something, I intentionally make it so that it's easy for somebody else to see what it is I've made, and they don't have to do all the work. Since it's on the common folder, they can use the same links, they can use the same bit.lys. Obviously, if I have my Bitmoji all over it, they might want to modify to put their own. But other than that, you know, it's a nice way to be able to save things. If you just, I have mine saved in Google Docs, just using 3 columns, but that's just kind of personal, my own neuroses. So. All right, ladies and gents, well, we have come to the end of today's session, and hopefully it didn't overwhelm you, but we're going to stick around to answer any questions, and I'll stop the recording now. And